I am Bonneau Ansley, an active real estate agent and founder of Ansley Real Estate, Christie's International, an award-winning Atlanta-based real estate brokerage that did over $3 billion in sales last year.
And I'm Chris Tuff, one of the first advertisers to work directly with Mark Zuckerberg in 2006. I've since gone on to be the best-selling author of The Millennial Whisperer and Save Your Asks.
And this is Brokering Billions. This podcast is about uncovering the hustle, perseverance, mindset, and tricks that are used by the top real estate agents in the country to help you take your business to the next level. In today's episode of Brokering Billions, we're talking to the #1 agent in South Carolina, Robertson Allen. He's also the owner of the Cassina Group. Robertson has a special talent of connecting with people and finding those perfect houses for folks in Charleston and out on the coast of Sullivan's Island and the other barrier islands that are around Charleston. Robertson, welcome to the podcast. Hello, agents across the world. I'm Bonneau Ansley, founder, Ansley Real Estate, Christie's International.
And I'm Chris Tuff, best-selling author of The Millennial Whisperer and Save Your Asks.
Guys, we've got the #1 real estate agent in South Carolina. This guy did $139 million, but he's not on a team. He's an individual. First individual agent we've had.
I love it. Robertson, dude, welcome to this show, man.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Robertson's based out of Charleston, South Carolina. Robertson has sold me a house. How was that experience, Robertson?
Yeah, let's go to that first.
Yeah, I mean, that's, always helping out a fellow agent is what we do in this biz. And, it comes with some interesting thoughts and challenges. And, we meshed our negotiating skills together to come up with a great result, for sure.
Oh, you did a great job. Not only is Robertson the #1 agent in South Carolina, he's also founder of the Cassina Group in Charleston, which you guys are a top brokerage firm. Y'all have how many offices? 3 or 4 offices around?
Co-founder of the Cassina Group. We've been going after it for about 17 years. But yeah, we have, we've held the top spot for a kind of a boutique brokerage firm here in the Charleston market for quite some time.
That's great. That's great. So I've known Robertson a long time, mutual friends, knew him in high school. Then you went to Clemson. You've got 2 kids.
2 kids, 2 boys.
You've been in real estate since 2002, right?
Yeah, right. I think 2001, 2002. Yep.
So how did you get into this business?
So it was pretty predictable, honestly. It was, my father was in real estate for about 45 years. And I told myself as a child, there was no way that I would ever follow in his footsteps, because real estate being as such an up and down business, I would never put myself through that ever. But lo and behold, after college, tried a couple of different spins at different jobs here locally that really didn't pan out. And then in the year 2001 is when I said, forget about it. I want to follow the footsteps of Chipper Allen and take a run at this real estate thing.
I mean, how much has the Charleston real estate game changed? I mean, I feel like for the first time ever, I'll be in some random place somewhere in the US and they're like, yeah, I'm looking at houses in Sullivan's. I'm like, you too? Really? Like, it's crazy.
Robertson,
yeah, it's completely changed. I mean, obviously with the influx of not only just the amount of people that are desiring to be down here in the Charleston area because what all we have to offer, but major companies such as Volvo and Boeing are here now. Whereas when I was growing up, it was just doctors, lawyers, and real estate agents for the most part.
Right. Well, I mean, and what's happening generally speaking with the market there? Can you just kind of give us an overview?
Yeah, so the market here right now, and has been for the past number of years, has been just off the charts. I mean, just like anywhere really in the Southeast right now, or a large part of the country, inventory levels are super, super low. And so it's really just increasing the price point significantly. But it's really, really difficult to find housing here in town, unless you really, really know, where really the opportunities lie.
All right. So Robertson, you did 139 million last year. What was the year before that? I mean, that's a pretty astronomical number for being an individual agent, yeah. Right? Like
it was a big number, for sure. And I believe the year before that was somewhere in the 70s, 60 to 70s is where I probably came in. So it probably almost doubled up what I did the year before. But last year was a product of a number of a lot of listings and a lot of individuals reaching directly out to me, not only to represent as buyers, but also, meeting up with the sellers. And so those transactions parlay into not only just one transaction, but sometimes multiple transactions, 3-4 times, because someone's got a house to sell, how many that type of thing.
Robertson, how many times would you double side a deal where you're representing the seller and then you bring a buyer?
I did not look at the statistics before the call today, but I would say probably in the neighborhood of 25 to 30% of my transactions last year were probably double-sided.
And as we talk to agents across the country, right, some still get 6%, like the agents in Georgia. Seems like to me you guys are more of a 5% region. Is that accurate? Or is that just in some?
Correct. I think that, that has probably gone to where, you see that a lot in the co-op commission category of a 2.5 on either side of those transactions.
So take us through a little bit of kind of your story, Robertson, because I mean, obviously you've been at this for quite some time, and you're doing something right, doubling your kind of your numbers year over year with such big numbers. Take us through a little bit of that story of your rise and what kind of worked there.
And said a little differently, did you start as an individual agent with a company, and then what moved you to start your own company and then start working under that platform?
Yeah, so I worked for a very large company starting out here locally in Charleston. Starting in 2001, and then the market obviously increasing to what it did back in 05 through 06 and parts of 07. That company just got larger and larger, and that office grew immensely. And at some point, the light kind of went off to where I didn't want to be just a number in a larger group. I kind of wanted to kind of create my own path, and and really kind of project what I was doing and making every single move I made, whether it was good, bad, whether it's success or unsuccessful, more meaningful for me in my real estate career. So at that point in time, I was doing some deals with my business partner, Jimmy Dye from Augusta, Georgia. And he and I were sharing some listings with the local developer here. And we decided to take the leap of faith together and both kind of plot our own course and start something in a market that was really kind of at the really kind of bubbling up towards the top. And we kind of understood that. But with that and what happened next really was I think indicative of our success moving forward as a company, because we didn't have a whole lot of overhead. It was just the two of us at the time, and we kind of, as quickly as we went up the mountain, we came down from the top pretty quickly. So we survived, whereas a lot of other fledgling companies here in town or didn't have the same sort of result.
Sure. Okay, so take us through a little bit of your numbers. So what would you say? Do you know what your average sale was last year?
Last year it was about 2.6 million.
Got it.
This year it's right around 3.3 million.
Wow.
So just the mindset of being an agent, working some deals with Jimmy and saying we're going out on our own. You did that, right? And in your mind, what took you from being a good agent, an average agent in Charleston, to being the top agent? And what do you think that characteristic that you have sets you apart from the other agents?
Well, I think that you really can't put limitations on yourself, honestly. I think that, number one, I feel like to be a successful real estate agent, I think you have to have a really strong positive outlook on things, but you also have to do extremely well with people. Not, shocking there. But, for me, I always feel like you have to have some sort of small, maybe kind of like not more or less kind of a chip on your shoulder. You just gotta be like, okay. For me, it was, I remember it like it was yesterday. I was a young agent, probably showing my first $1 million client around town, which back then, $1 million was a lot more than it is today. But I remember walking into a house in downtown Charleston, and one of the agents kind of said, "Oh, let me take it over from here. This guy just started in the business. He's not from here. I grew up in Somerville, which is about 25, 30 minutes away from here. So I was quote unquote an outsider from kind of the downtown, real estate community. Now I knew everybody, and Dad, my father, was from downtown Charleston, but it was something that stuck with me to where I said to myself, all right, well, if that's the way it's going to be, then I'm going to have to work harder. I'm going to have to make a name for myself. I'm going to have to put myself out there. And, as really anyone knows that has been in this business, it's a numbers game. So, I treated it as such, as a really kind of a game of how many people I could connect with and how fast I could get to where I really wanted to be, which, growing up in a real estate family, my mom, I don't know if she was trying to use reverse psychology, nor did she know that I was going to go into real estate, but she always told me never to put pressure on myself to be number one. My father, a number of years out of his career, hailed that top spot, but, I saw how much work it took to get to that spot, the calls that he had to make to get there. And so that was always something that, stayed with me through like the beginning of my real estate career until this day is, really putting in the time, regardless of how successful you are in this business. If you're not putting in the time, if you're not putting in, the amount of connections and doing what you're supposed to do, I don't care if you just started yesterday in real estate or if you've been in it for 22 years, you still got to do the same things over and over to be successful.
Well, now that you're number one agent, are you content with where you are, or are you trying to hit bigger numbers this year than you did last year?
So currently right now, where I was last year, I think currently about $15 million ahead of where I was last year. And so, I always feel like that you can do more, being complacent is not the way to be going through life. And anything you do, you can always be better at something. And so, I enjoy what I do. I think that there's probably a number of real estate agents that are really, really good at what they do. But they go home and they're like, what in the world am I doing being a real estate agent? Because they just don't like either dealing with people or, handling, difficult negotiations. But I thrive on that. That's what I want to do every single day. And it's a blessing and a curse because I also have a family too that I care a lot about. But it's, working out that work-life balance is part of it as well in real estate, because you can do nothing and call yourself a real estate agent, but you get paid zero, right? Or you could do a lot with it and make a lot of money in this industry. But you've got to make sure that you carve out time for those.
So how do you do it? I mean, is it setting a strict schedule for yourself? I mean, obviously you've got something in place that works tactically. How have you found balance?
For me, it's very unorganized. I'll be honest with you. I mean, there's probably people that y'all have in your podcast that have like a daily routine, and Bob Corcoran who's a real estate coach, preaches, setting up your ideal weekly schedule. And that's something that, for me, I'll look at my calendar for the next day and kind of pinpoint who I need to speak with. But always devoting time each day to prospecting, whether it be with past clients, new clients, or just making phone calls to friends and family, just to kind of check in and just making sure that people know that you're there to either help out in any way you can in terms of anything real estate related, whether it be finding a gardener or a housekeeper or whatever. But just being available, but also being top of mind for people when they're thinking about real estate.
I mean, that's a consistent thing we've heard from top producers is being top of mind, and people do that different ways as a real estate agent. They keep in touch with the accountants and the lawyers and the divorce lawyers and everybody in between relative to, how am I going to stay top of mind to what we use the term, a multiplier in our last episode, people that can help build your business and being fans of your business. Sounds like that you've got a really good program in Charleston.
Yeah. I mean, and one of the things that, is, I think so hard to do, but you've obviously done it, is the reputation side, right? I mean, you went out there and you've created the reputation. I mean, I think that's what, from the sounds of your most recent stories, people come to you, right? Which is a lot different than some of the listeners out there where they're aspiring for that. So if you're to break down in your kind of experience or stories, like what has been the most profound thing that you've been able to do within your business to help create that reputation, right?
I think it's just being very transparent with your audience and just kind of making sure that back to my early example, I feel like that respecting everyone that you come in contact with, buyers, sellers, especially other real estate agents, appraisers, everyone that's in your kind of your life cycle, and just really kind of doing the right thing and being positive. And I think that positivity and success breeds success, and I'm a true believer of karma as well. If you're doing the right thing, and trying your hardest, I feel like that the results will eventually fall into place. And sometimes that's not always the case, but if you're trying your best and you're putting yourself out there and you're treating the way that you feel like you should be treated, then that's the recipe for success really in anything in life, in my opinion.
Robertson, a lot of agents that we've had on this show kind of start as an individual agent. I did, right? And I had one assistant that kind of kept me organized, kind of made sure that everything I did bad, they could kind of backfill, right? Do you see yourself in the future as a way to continue to grow and hit over 200 million and then 250 million? Do you see yourself maybe adding another team member here in the future? You're getting to the numbers where in our
right?
criteria where there's so much you can do in a 24-hour day. Does it make sense for you to start thinking about adding another team member?
I think so. I mean, I'm present for all of my listings, if I can be, and sometimes I'll have to lean on my assistant to help me out there, or another fellow agent who works here at the Cassina Group. And that's the beautiful thing about our company is we all kind of help each other out in that aspect. But yeah, I mean, for me, in terms of scaling my personal business, being everywhere all the time, it's unobtainable, And
Now,
so
what we've seen is there's a reflection point where you have to, or the agent that wants to scale has to release some control to say, God, I can't be everywhere, right? But I want to be able to do this much more during the day, and releasing that control and having the confidence to say assistant A or assistant B can be that person for you. So you can be 2 places, 3 places more during the day to continue to scale your numbers up. So looking at who that person would be, what's the ideal next hire for you?
yeah, I think it's probably a showing agent for me.
That's
To help.
That's a salary agent, you think?
Correct. Yeah. I think that I like to handle a lot of the communications that are going out, and so I probably could add someone like that to help me kind of get the messaging out on a more consistent basis, for sure, which might be another hire down the road. But yeah, I think a showing agent would help for the immediate time frame for me. But it comes in cycles, but this, and you're really, really busy one moment, and then you can pop up for air for 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden it just piles right back on you. And 3 weeks ago, I was like, I was like, winds of change are swirling. Maybe this thing's over. And then now, bam, it's like full bore. Everybody's listing. People are in the market buying stuff, and it's gangbusters again. And, I'm about to take a trip on Friday, which I normally don't take vacations that often, but, it's never a good time, right?
Right.
Well, when you have a team, and I'm just saying, it gives you the ability to be able to go on vacation a little bit more freely, right? And you've got the 2 kids, the 2 boys, right?
Yeah.
And being the great dad that you are, and being present for, home for dinner and things like that, that's something that could really be something that could be a good thing, to get you over that $200 million mark and higher.
Yeah.
Awesome. So Robertson, we have a lot of listeners out there that are newer agents, and they're just in the game. They're doing 3 to 5 million a year. They've got more of those lower price points. What, in your own experience and words, would you say, what's the one thing they need to either let go of or embrace to take it to the next level, to really raise that that price point up?
Yeah. So at the Cassina Group, obviously we hire agents that have been, a few years in the business. And that I feel like is a question that everyone has coming in. Everybody wants to be, selling multi-million-dollar homes. But how do you get there? And I think it really boils down to confidence. If you are doing the things at the Cassina Group, we teach methods of reaching out to those higher net worth individuals who have these amazing houses around town. But with our brand here in Charleston, we say that the door is already ajar. You just got to go push it open. You got to go get it. You got to be confident, and you got to be persistent in your actions. Not overly, persistent and kind of go full Tommy Boy with the bread and everything. But you've got to have confidence in what you're doing, because those individuals who have these amazing houses here in the Charleston area, they were able to afford those houses because they were successful in their careers, and they were successful in either negotiating deals or climbing a corporate ladder. And so they've been there, done that. And so you have to impress them with your knowledge of the market, the knowledge of their home and surrounding homes. And if you have that confidence, the likelihood of you succeeding is far greater than you just kind of making a random phone call to Joe Schmo who lives on the street, of you trying to farm a neighborhood. You've got to be much more directed in your approach to success in that.
And it's a long game, right? I mean, so I just wrote a book called Save Your Asks, and the call to action is to save your asks, right, until you develop the relationship to where it's actually ripe enough where it's like, of course we're going to do business together, right? And obviously you've done a great job of that. And it's such a fine line. I actually just got back from a speech. I just landed from a speech in Miami to a bunch of high net worth bankers. And I told this group, I was like, listen, at the end of the day, creating relationships is really easy. It's sustaining them that's so difficult, right? Sustaining them and deepening them, right? Yeah. So, and it sounds like, and I love that point of confidence is such a huge part of it, and really embracing what it is that you are getting hired to do around that knowledge of your local real estate and what's happening.
Well, just like what you said earlier on is, look, I started to have a chip on my shoulder, and I used that chip to have the confidence to go ask for the business and call people that you might not know and get into the door, which I think is
that's exactly right. And being persistent, and making sure that you're making your follow-up phone calls, because you're not going to get a yes, day one. It's very rare that occurs. So, staying with it and staying the course. And if you do that and you make the phone calls and you play the game the right way, then success will without question happen for you.
Do you think that technology has played a part in your success? You've got a brother that has been wildly successful in real estate technology. Listeners, Robertson's brother started a company called Boomtown, which many people listening are familiar with. I'm sure that you got to use your brother's technology. How has that given you an edge? And what kind of technology do you use to stay ahead and going forward in this world in real estate? Technology is a big deal, and it changes weekly, monthly, yearly.
Yeah, so, absolutely. I mean, that was when you start talking about the formation of the Cassina Group. my brother in Boomtown played a part in it, a large part in it, honestly. We were the beta testers for the Boomtown platform back in, I think, 2008. 2008.
Give a quick rundown of what that platform is?
So Boomtown is a lead generation platform that obviously brings in buyers off of a really sticky website, and you've got a back-end website that you've got the customer relationship management tool in the back that has grown from someone registering with just a phone number to the ability for us to email to now it's, it thinks for you, does everything for you. It's an amazing system that has evolved over the years. But that was kind of a pivotal point in the success of our company. Real estate had dried up almost completely here in the Charleston market. And one day Greer came to both Jimmy and myself and say, hey, listen, y'all want to take a run at this thing together, and we'll throw a couple $100 at a Google AdWord campaign and see what happens. Well, lo and behold, people started using the website and people started registering on the website. And we sold anything and everything. We sold, vacant pieces of land for $10,000 to $20,000 up in rural areas of South Carolina, all the way to, selling, multi-million-dollar homes here in Charleston during a downturn in this economy and the Great Recession, I guess. And that is what we were getting, leads. And so we had to get hire agents to help with those leads. And that's what really was a catapult for our company moving forward. But no, technology is a huge part of the success of the Cassina Group and our agents. Without it, managing all of the clients that we have would be extremely difficult. And as I said earlier, the system that we use, Boomtown, has evolved over the years into a giant. I've got 37 agents, I think, that work for me now, and I think my brother now, we were kind of running parallel in terms of our hiring schedules, but he took a pretty giant leap. I think he has over 400 people that work for him. So
we should probably talk to him about sponsoring this episode.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah,
so
I could line that up.
So would you say that the one characteristic that you must have as a new agent or a seasoned agent is that technology, or is that just a piece that you have to have, and there's one other characteristic that sets the decent agents that make a good living to the great agents?
I think you've got to start to become a great agent. I think you have to start with a solid foundation. And I feel like when I meet a new agent, or we're interviewing an agent here at the Cassina Group, I'm looking for a couple of things. One is a positive attitude, an amazing, look at life, and you want to be around this person, because that's what obviously people gravitate towards. But you also want to have a focused and determined individual who wants to climb the ladder, who wants to do more. And we've had agents that have started with us that were about to get out of real estate, altogether. And, we at the Cassina Group pride ourselves at, we feel like we've taken numerous agents to a new level of success through the systems that we use and kind of the methods of, reaching out to clients. We've kind of given them ability to really go to places in their real estate careers that they really never would have imagined, in my opinion.
Well, it's interesting. Chris and I have a proprietary real estate psychological test that we've rolled out, and listeners have been using it to find out what kind of real estate agent they are. And we've got 4 different quadrants and a bunch of questions to ask to figure out, what kind of real estate agent you are and what other characteristics that you need to do to be able to become a better agent. And everything that you just said is extremely interesting and falls right in line with what we're doing.
Exactly.
Robertson, you've been phenomenal to give us your time and your wisdom on this episode. I think that the listeners are going to love everything that you've got to say.
Yeah, I mean, and I'd love a house in Sullivan's, Robertson.
Hey,
So
we can make it happen.
For under 10 million. That's perfect.
Well, thank you so much. This has been a great episode. I'm Beno Ansley.
And I'm Chris Tuff.
Thanks for watching Brokering Billions.
Thanks, guys.